Welcome back. All right, I swear at some point in time I will have the other set done. It's gonna happen. It's just piecemeal, very piecemeal. It's only been 4 months. All right, so I watched Dynamite tonight from start to finish, and I picked a good one. I knew there was a title match. I knew there was a good trios match to be had. I want to say too off the start, the 6-man tag belts were one of my favorite things about the old NWA. I know most people watching this wouldn't remember, but 6-man tag belts used to be a thing. I am so glad that they're bringing it back, and I think honestly a really good 6-man tag match can be absolutely fantastic. And because you've got 6 guys in there, it can be a good long match without getting boring. So to start off, Jericho had his face to face with Daniel Garcia, who is so over with the crowd. Like, the crowd absolutely loves Daniel Garcia. And who can blame them? He comes across as very personal. And what's interesting is when Garcia originally debuted in AEW, there's a W in it. Almost said WWE. Very close. AEW. When he debuted, I thought, well, he's a natural heel. And I really didn't see a lot of potential there for a face run. But yeah, he's got to turn face. And I'm kind of hoping he doesn't join the Blackpool Combat Club. I'm kind of hoping he stays on his own. Bryan Danielson did come out and interrupt, and Daniel Garcia pushes Jericho down, and so they've set up Jericho's going to face Bryan Danielson at All Out. They did set up a lot of matches for All Out today, and they really started pushing it, which is good because the pay-per-view is on September 4th. Then they had Dax Harwood versus Jay Lethal. Dax Harwood is very over right now. See, there's a lot of talk about the booking in AEW. And here's the problem. There are a lot of wrestlers that fans really like. There are a lot of wrestlers who draw a big reaction from the crowd. Now, people point to ratings, and I don't care. I don't care. All I care about is the fans watching, both in person and on TV, and we're watching from home. I'm not concerned about the numbers. That's for the company of AEW to worry about, not me as a fan. I could not possibly care less about where the rating is this week. I know they lost 20,000, they gained 15. Who cares? Dax Harwood, though, coming back to my point, is over. Now, what's interesting is he, of course, is one half of FTR. But the other interesting part is they've really been handled in AEW like a Tully Blanchard, Arn Anderson tag team. Tully Blanchard and Arn Anderson were a fantastic tag team who also went on singles runs. And it was done very well to where Arn Anderson could realistically be TV champion. I remember, I think it was the national title that Tully Blanchard had at one point, and it worked. It did. It absolutely, it worked. It was very well done. So Dax Harwood against Jay Lethal goes the way that people would have thought. Lethal ends up, hooks the trunks for a roll-up victory. I've always wondered how that gets you the extra leverage. Like, I don't know how that helps you keep a guy down holding on to his shorts. But anyways, it's an old wrestling trope. It works. So after that, we find out that in a 6-man tag match at All Out, Jay Lethal is going to be tagging with Motor City Machine Guns, which got a big reaction from the crowd. Unless that's somewhat piped in, and I know there's been discussions of that. But seriously, Chris Sabin and Alex Shelley are a tag team that is very well known around the wrestling world. I'm very surprised they never had a WWE run because they're very good. And so I'm really looking forward to them coming in. And this is one of the reasons why I enjoy AEW. You could see wrestlers from almost any company other than WWE. But you can see wrestlers from various companies. And Motor City Machine Guns, that's going to be absolutely great. And I was surprised by this, Thunder Rosa, apparently not 100%, so she is stepping down as champ. They're going to name an interim champ at the pay-per-view, and then she'll come back and odds are wrestle for that title. And we'll discuss interim champs and how they can become real champs soon enough. But yeah, Thunder Rosa, you could see the emotion with her. And honestly, I felt bad for her. I thought that was a shame. It's always a shame to see somebody's title run come to an end like that. But this is a chance to, and again, this is the optimist in me, for AEW to really reset the women's division. Come on. It's not about the talent in the division. It is about having that organized structure. One thing and I think this is what's causing a lot of the chaos with the booking, there's all kinds of really good wrestlers there, And it kind of feels like there's some fantasy booking that goes on. Like, hey, let's throw these two together and see what happens. Have the feuds, have that structure, honor your rankings, and make sure that there's that structure to it. They've done it before. I know they can do it again. But this time they have to do it with the women. And I really, really hope they do, because there are so many women in this company that I think are good wrestlers. Now, one thing that stands out too is, and apparently this is a TNT thing, they're only allowed to have one women's match on per Dynamite episode. And I haven't seen anything to tell me that's not the truth, which means if you watch AEW Dark or Dark Elevation, there are a ton of women's matches, likely because they can't get on TV with Dynamite. And that's going to cause some upset, right? That's going to cause some upset. So Billy Gunn then fights this kid, Colton Gunn, and you knew what was going to happen here. Good idea what was going to happen here. Colton ends up winning because Stokely Hathaway gets involved, and he helps to take out the Acclaimed along with Austin Gunn. And so Swerve in Our Glory then comes in to stop a beatdown when the Guns try to beat down the Acclaimed and Billy Gunn. And so, yeah, tag champs are in the ring. They make the save, and we'll come back to them in a little bit. Britt Baker versus Kylan King was next. I was disappointed in this one. This is kind of what I was talking about with the women's division. You have Kylan King on Dark challenge Britt Baker and beat her up pretty good. And the crowd really got into it. The crowd really enjoyed seeing Kylan King going out there and kicking some ass. Now, the problem is you have to continue to build her up, right? Now, I get it. Britt Baker, DMD, is... I think she was the most over women's wrestler they had, and then they kind of dropped the ball with that. Like, she was so over, and now it feels like that's kind of gone by the wayside. And I don't know how they're going to follow it up. So we'll see what happens with the women's division over the next couple of months. I still don't understand why. I mean, I understand when Britt lost to Thunder Rosa, they wanted other wrestlers to be in the spotlight and get the shot at the title. But she's the former champ. I agree with not giving a former champ an automatic rematch, but she should still have been in the mix, and it felt like she was just kind of pushed out of the way. So we get Britt Baker and Kylan King. Baker wins with the lockjaw, and it was a quick match. Honestly, Kylan beat her up a bit, but then Baker just beat her. And then she did a little promo, about Cleveland and whatnot, and then Toni Storm was coming down to the ring slowly, which means Jamie Hayter has a chance to come out and beat her up. Rebel was there too. And so Shida comes out to make the save. So next week on Dynamite, Hikaru Shida is tagging with Toni Storm against Jamie Hayter and Britt Baker because holla, 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 we got ourselves a tag match. So at the pay-per-view, it's going to be Toni versus Britt versus Jamie versus Hikaru. Now, it's a shame that we won't have Michael Cole to call this one and say, how are they going to coexist? It really feels like this one's pulled right out of a WWE playbook, doesn't it? But there's some classic wrestling booking to this as well. I remember tag teams that you didn't know whether or not they could get along in the old NWA as well. So this is going to be an interesting feud to watch. I would think out of those four wrestlers, Britt should get the title back, but I think a fallout between Jamie and Britt's coming, and then we'll get a fallout between Toni and Thunder Rosa at some point after she gets back, right? So my guess is Toni probably wins the title at All Out, setting up a match between herself and Thunder Rosa when Thunder Rosa's ready to come back, but we'll see. I've seen people talk about Thunder Rosa's title reign as not being very good. That has nothing to do with Thunder Rosa. Again, it's the women's division, and you've got to get them on TV more. I've also seen the comments of, well, they should get a third hour. No, you don't need a third hour. You need a second hour on Rampage, and you need to stop treating it like a B show. It cannot succeed if it's treated like Dark Plus. Well, it's not really dark. It's on TV. It's Dark Plus. So, yeah, it just doesn't... And it's too bad because I watched the first few episodes of Rampage, really enjoyed it, and it is missable at this point, and that's a problem when you have 3 hours on TV and one of the hours is kind of missable. They're clearly trying to juice that up. There's some really good matches scheduled for Friday's Rampage. I think part of it too is I think for AEW, they need to do the tapings for Rampage. They need to do the tapings for Dark. Not when they're doing the taping for Dynamite. You can't have a crowd that's exhausted from 5 hours straight of wrestling. You can't, and they've done that. So they need to change it. Make it feel different. Like, you have Raw and SmackDown and WWE. There's no reason you can't have Dynamite and Rampage. And if you want to do a roster split, this roster is so bloated, you absolutely could do a roster split. No problem. It'd be easy enough. You could call one ROH. Just throwing that out there, although I understand that for advertising reasons and network reasons, that likely doesn't fly. I'm just saying. Then they had backstage Swerve and Our Glory against the Acclaimed, making a match because Swerve and Our Glory felt bad for them for getting beat up. It's a weird reason to say, well, we'll fight these guys, but they did it, so it's done. So, all right, cool. I don't know. I like Swerve and Our Glory, though. I know at some point in time these guys are going to turn against each other, and it's going to be pretty major feud. But while they're together, it's a lot of fun to watch. I still don't know what WWE was thinking, letting either wrestler go. So CM Punk versus Jon Moxley was next. Now, how far down the rabbit hole do we want to go? I will go farther down the rabbit hole than what I've seen on Twitter. Yeah, I checked the Twitter machine. CM Punk hated his title reign in the WWE. Why? He wasn't the main event. He did not like the fact that when he was champ, wasn't in the main event, and the title wasn't as important when he held it. So you'd have, the main event was not the title match. And it was something that WWE did way back in the day with Bret Hart. As much as they talk about Bret Hart being a legend, the best there was, the best there is, and they play all of his sound bites and everything, at the time when Bret was champ, his matches were very often in the middle of the card or the next match before the main event. Here is CM Punk against Jon Moxley. It is not the main event of the show, and it's for the undisputed title. So as soon as I saw this, I thought, that's... In fact, the reason I was watching this all the way through was I heard our main event is a trios match, and then they mentioned the world title match, and I thought, that has to tick CM Punk off unless this is for a storyline. I've watched wrestling long enough to know that fans get worked. The wrestling websites get worked. But there's usually some truth behind that work. So I think with all the CM Punk talk about whether or not he gets along with the guys backstage and all this, he was known for being a jerk back in WWE days. It's not a shocker to me. I don't find any of it to be a surprise, but he's also a very good wrestler. I always thought that inside the ring, he kept his ego in check. I never saw him have a problem putting guys over when he felt that was the right move. If he refused to put a guy over in WWE, and we look back at it now, he was right. So him and Moxley had a fast match. Now they played it up that Punk gets hurt, and then Moxley ends up pinning him. And Moxley didn't care that he was hurt. Now, what this does, it makes Moxley look badass, which he already does. Jon Moxley is absolutely one of my favorite wrestlers, and was when he was in WWE as well. Even when they were doing all the stupid crap with him, he was still one of my favorite wrestlers. I was always excited to see him come out. I didn't like how they had him switching between good and bad all the time, which AEW is having that problem too. The good news is that Moxley's character is more fluid than Dean Ambrose was. Dean Ambrose, it felt like it was a huge switch. Moxley, it doesn't feel like it's such a huge switch. So CM Punk versus Jon Moxley goes quickly. Moxley ends up winning it, is the undisputed champion. They had Punk getting helped out of the ring, and it's done. So yeah, there you go. Then they had a Christian Cage promo backstage on Jungle Boy, the match that they're going to have. And I thought that was entertaining. But then they had another promo. And this is something I've started to notice with AEW that's starting to feel very much like their competition. So that Ricky Starks goes to the ring. He has a promo as well. And he challenges Powerhouse Hobbs for the pay-per-view. And apparently that's going down. So that should be a great match. The good news is all of the matches for All Out look fantastic. Then they had Moxley backstage cutting a promo on how he's the best. Punk's not the best in the world. I guess he's not the best in the world. And I thought that was well delivered as well. And then the main event was fantastic. And it did have that pay-per-view feel to it. It was Death Triangle versus Will Ospreay and Aussie Open, which together they're called the United Empire. One thing I noticed in this match, Will Ospreay at least 3 times, he could see what was going on, and he he didn't intervene. There was one time where there's one point in the match where he could have slid into the ring to make the save, but he was waiting for Pac. And so you can see him on camera like this. And I was like, he probably doesn't realize we can see him on camera. So just little things like that kind of took me out of the match in the moment, but there were great spots. There was the double Hurricanrana or Poison Rana, however you want to put it. And then Kip Sabian comes out and attacks Pac. So sure, why not Kip Sabian? Kip Sabian, we haven't seen him in a while. Penelope Ford's back. Kip Sabian's back. All is good in the world, right? So the United Empire wins. They get the pin on Phoenix, who is one of the most underrated wrestlers, period. WWE's always looking for their next Rey Mysterio. It's Phoenix. Phoenix is the next Rey Mysterio in my eyes. I honestly, he's fantastic. So Omega and the Young Bucks come out to sell that they will be against Ospreay and the Aussie Open or United Empire next week on Dynamite in what will be the finals of the Dynamite half of the tournament. They will be having the finals on the, I think it's the finals on the Rampage side on Friday. So we'll see how it all works out. Let me know what you guys thought if you watched the show today. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe. If you're browsing your way through, you just happened upon this video, and this was a fun show. I'm glad I watched it from start to finish. Is Punk done in AEW? Is he hurt? Did he rush himself back? What do you think? Let me know your thoughts, and we'll probably find out from the dirt sheets soon enough about what's going on and what that means. But still, that result, absolutely shocking, and it gets the wrestling community talking, and that's always good news. Thank you guys so much for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.